I think an urgent upgrade for Jimmy is some lube. Good morning and welcome to an unusually sunny, dry and warm actually Sunday morning ride in Essex. Well, I haven't said it was sunny and dry. There might be the odd puddle or two. Yes, we're out for another 35-mile route this morning. I was going to come out on my carbon fibre bike. However, there still is quite a bit of mud and detritus on the road, despite it being lovely and sunny today. So I thought, sod it, I'll bring the gravel bike out again. But it does give me a good opportunity to show you some of the budget upgrades that I put on mine and Jimmy's gravel bikes. Now, before we start, I should just say that not all of these upgrades are purely practical. Some of them might be just a little bit more on the aesthetic side, but that's fine. We all want a good looking bike. So starting up at number one are some new tyres. Now, when I put Jimmy's budget gravel bike together, I left the old 26-inch standard mountain bike tyres on there. And they were good for a while, but they were dated, they were old, the grip on them wasn't great. So some new, knobbly, grippy tyres were called for. Now, after a lot of research, and it did take quite a bit of research because being as Jimmy's bike is an old 26-inch mountain bike, there didn't seem to be any gravel specific 26-inch wheels. So I had to go for some slightly knobblier mountain bike wheels. And I ended up buying some Kenda small block 8s, but they do come in 650B and 700C varieties, or 27.5-inch or 29-inch if you'd prefer. Now, I managed to get them really cheap from an auction site that's selling off loads of old stock cycling gear, and I managed to get a pair of them for a tenner. Absolutely incredible price, but you can get them across the internet anyway for about 15 to 20 pounds each. So even at the standard price, they're not actually that expensive. Now, as I said earlier, they are slightly more knobbly than your average gravel tyres, so they're not going to be fantastic on the roads, although Jimmy has already stated that he loves the grind. He loves the extra workout it gives him. But they are going to have slightly more rolling resistance than, say, my Panaracer Gravel Kings, because although they are knobbly, they still do have a fairly flat profile. But where they come into their own is when you get off-road. Jimmy and I went out for a stupidly early ride on Friday morning, leaving at 5:30 a.m. and we went across some of the fields across the back of our houses, and it was unbelievably filthy. It had rained quite heavily the day before, and it's fair to say we were riding through a bog. Jimbo, so what's slowing you down at the moment?
Funny you should mention that. I've picked up a small part of the field that we just went through. Literally, this is what she was designed to do. She's filled. I reckon that'll fly off once we get going. Oh, it's flying off now. Oh.
But despite that, or probably in spite of that, Jimmy's tyres performed infinitely better than mine, because I could just get no traction on the really deep mud. And so there were points where I just had to get off and walk, unfortunately, but Jimmy kept soldiering on with these big knobbly tyres. So if you want a tyre that is pretty decent on the road, but even better off-road, then the Kenda small block 8 is the one for you. So moving on to number two, wheels. Now, this is one of the more aesthetic choices that I was talking about, because simply changing your wheels out from the silver aluminium pair to a nice black aluminium pair probably isn't going to save you much weight. That said, the ones that I bought for Jimmy are a few grams lighter than the old 90s mountain bike ones, so that's a nice bonus. But as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you just want your bike to look nice. And Jimmy, what do you think of the new black wheels?
Mwah. Probably words I may not use on Mr. Treadway's YouTube channel. Suffice to say, I'm very, very happy with them. They look superb.
So yeah, we swapped the old silver aluminium wheels out for some new stealthy black ones, and I must admit, they do look very nice. And even better than just looking nice, they're nice on the wallet as well, because they were only 50 quid for the pair from Treads. Bonus. Number three, brakes. Now again, when I was building Jimmy's gravel bike, if you've watched that video, you'll know that I was trying to do it on an ultra budget, which I eventually did because it only cost me about 160 quid. So there were a few original things on it that I decided to leave. One of those things were the 90s brake blocks. Now Jimmy tells me that since putting on the new Clark's multi-compound brakes, he's told me he's nearly gone over the handlebars a few times. Now having multi-compound brakes will not only help you in drier weather, but in the wet weather as well, when traditionally rim brakes tend to struggle somewhat. Now if you're on disc brakes, you can still upgrade your brake blocks by buying something like a Cool Stop set of brakes, and they would definitely help stop you more urgently. How are you finding those new brake blocks?
Ready? I had to clip out there. Lovely. So much difference. See, these small things you don't appreciate. Spongy before. Pete tried to convince me that that was because rim brakes are the devil's work. Now, it has made a massive difference.
Well, talking of stopping, we've now stopped for breakfast. I'm starving. Right, breakfast done, and we are back out on the road. And it feels like the temperature has dropped ever so slightly because it is now feeling very cold, but I think we've just been sat around for too long because Garmin is telling me it's now 12 degrees, which is unheard of for December. But we'll carry on with our budget upgrade. So number 4, we've got a suspension stem. Now there are some very expensive varieties of these things that you can buy, and you've probably seen them reviewed on similar cycling channels. However, you know me well, I love AliExpress, and that's exactly where I got this one from. So this cost me about 35 quid from AliExpress, which isn't the cheapest stem in the world, but it is quite nifty, and then it gives you 40 mil of travel that really just takes the bite and the sting out of any larger bumps on the road, on the gravel tracks. The other good thing about it is that it comes with 4 differently tensioned coiled springs, so you can choose the level of sponginess in the bounce. Now I had a little play around with this when I first got it, and I found that the red spring was best for my purposes, which is 1 down from the highest tension, and it seems to work pretty well. And in fact, going back again to the ride that Jimmy and I did across the fields the other morning, going over some of those lumps and bumps in the fields, it really did take the bite out of some of those bumps that you suddenly hit, especially in the pitch black when you can't see them. Now it would be remiss of me not to point out some of the minor drawbacks with this stem, and there are 2 main ones with this. The first one is fairly minor, and it's just more of a little annoyance than anything, and it's that when you extend the stem down and it travels back up, there's no damping as it returns to its original position, so there's a very solid metallic clunk as it comes back up. Now again, it's only a minor thing, and if that's the price to pay for happy wrists over the lumpy bumpy stuff, well then I'm happy to pay it. Now the second drawback is slightly more consequential, because while my old stem weighed 207 grams, this one weighs in at a hefty 463. So at well over double the weight, you are going to notice it slightly, unfortunately, especially if you're putting it on a nice lightweight bike. Now you may have heard me previously talking about my gravel bike and moaning like a drain at how heavy it is. So seeing as this bike already weighs a good 13 kilos, adding an extra 200 grams isn't really going to make that much difference. So after previous gravel rides, I have had aching wrists and palms before because of the jolts that go through your wrists as you're riding over the bumps. With this, I've had no problems. So despite the clanking noise and the weight of the stem, I've been very, very happy with it and would highly recommend it. And so sticking with a suspension theme, my 5th and final budget gravel bike upgrade is a suspension seat post. Now again, you've probably seen these reviewed on other channels for the much more expensive versions, but this one cost me about 20 quid from AliExpress, so it's much more palatable and friendly on the wallet. Now similar to the stem, it gives about 20 to 30 millimeters of travel, so it's not a huge amount of bounce, but it's just enough to stop your saddle slamming into your most precious undercarriage when you hit some of the lumpy stuff. Now again, I've used this on quite a few of my gravel rides, and whilst I didn't really have any saddle problems to begin with, it's definitely more noticeable now and much more comfortable than having a rigid seat post. And for the sake of 20 quid, well, you can't really go wrong. So there you go, 150 quid for 5 budget upgrades for your gravel bike that will not only make your ride more enjoyable and more comfortable, but also make your bike look a lot better as well. But what do you think? Have I missed anything out? Is there anything you've got on your gravel bike that you'd recommend to other people? Let me know in the comments below. But otherwise guys, as ever, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and my budget upgrade guide. Oh, and if you're watching this on the day it's published, I hope you and your families have a wonderful Christmas. Take care guys, see you in the next one.
Here we now! Here we now! Oh yeah, bounce on the saddle, why don't you? Go on. Ooh, ooh, lovely.